we got her February 2020, not knowing about a pandemic. So it kind of worked out in that sense because we were home to take care of her because she turned 3. So she was born in November of 2019.
Oh,
So, and then we got her in January January, and then we had January, February, and then the pandemic hit.
what kind of a dog?
She's a cane corso.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Yeah, let me see, I'll bring up a picture. Well, of course, because she just turned 3 yesterday, so she had to have the big birthday gifts.
Oh,
Yeah, there she is. They're just strong dogs.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
great dogs, but crazy strong.
And the energy?
That too, yes. She likes to play. Well, she just had, in January, she had knee surgery.
Already?
Yeah, costs a lot of money.
Oh, yes. They're not cheap.
Oh, I did not get insurance. People are like, did you get insurance? I go, clearly not. Clearly not.
They're like our children.
Yeah, I know. So she was limping pretty bad, and she was limping for a while. So it was one of those things where we finally did the surgery. But they're like, oh, her other knee's going to go. I'm like, that's great. Like, it was like $6,800. And then she got 2 infections. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, it was, but you love your dogs. And I have it's on wood behind you. I have the same one.
Come on, really?
Yeah, but it's at the front door. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone had it outside of their, I guess, cabin or whatever you want to call it in Pine Lake here in Alberta, and they gave it to me as a gift. Yeah.
You can see it's weathered, but that's what makes it look really cool.
Is yours as weathered or no?
Well, it was because I had it in the window for a bit, so it looks weathered too. Yeah, same thing.
I mean, obviously there's like things breaking on it and stuff, but yeah, I think it's just neat. I like it. I like that look. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it too.
I probably need a better backdrop, but it flows with the Canadian podcast. So
yeah, you got to keep it, and it's unique, right? It's one of a kind. So
exactly. I have like the actual Canadian flag in the garage hung up, but I was like, no, it doesn't look the same. It looks
no. And I've seen it with some of your podcasts, like the wooden one. That looks way better. Way better.
How's life been? You had Satch in Toronto.
Yeah, I really didn't get to see him because he missed his flight, so he didn't make it for the run. And then I did see him because I was working the run. So you should have seen me. My head was on a swivel. I'm like, I can't miss him. And as I turned, I almost missed him. And then
my goodness,
called my name. I'm like, seriously, I've been looking for you all morning, and I almost missed him. Oh, on the Friday? Yeah. So like that whole thing was, he's like, hey, I'm coming to do the marathon. And I'm like, hey, we should go for a run, right? Because you're a crazy runner and I'm a crazy runner. So let's go running. And he's like, well, let's invite people, right? I'm like, great idea. So, I put it out there, and I was busy, and I was like, oh, I got to get this poster out there. I got to put it out there for people to join us. Like, it was delayed. And then when, Devin and Morgan were killed, and being that I'm the team captain for Toronto and Devin was the team captain for South Simcoe, it was kind of I got to do something running related, even though Morgan wasn't, but still. And I was like, hey, Sachi, okay if we dedicate this to the officers? He goes, absolutely. And that just kind of mushroomed from there within 24 hours. Like, that was a 24-hour thing. I did it the day before, and it blew up.
How many people showed up?
We had between, I would say about 50 or 60.
Wow.
So that was community members. We had some South Simcoe officers, family members of the fallen, and some of the runners that run to Ottawa every year.
Mm-hmm. It's like, what the hell is going on in our world right now? This is, I mean, you hear about this in the States, but not Canada.
Well, that's exactly what I said. I go, this is not Canada. Like, this doesn't happen here. You hear, and it's I don't know, it's sad to say, but you're used to hearing about it in the States, right? You're like, oh, another officer killed. Oh, like, it's sad, but you hear it's so frequent over there that because of their access to guns, right?
Right.
And here you're just like, why is this happening here?
Do you think it's a mental health thing, or it's?
Well, I think it's not just one thing, right? So I think our mental health system is severely broken, severely. So people aren't getting the help they need, the access to therapy, the access to medication, and that's everybody. It doesn't matter what whether you're a billionaire or whether you're a homeless person, nobody is getting the access that they require, mental health wise. So that's a big part of it.
I reposted something today, something about an OPP officer might have taken his own life or her own life.
Yeah. and a lot of that now before, don't get me wrong, that's been happening for years, but you just didn't hear about it, right? We didn't talk about it.
Was it a social media thing? Is it technology, or is it just we didn't talk about it? Literally.
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of we didn't talk about it, and we also didn't have social media. So now we're trying to normalize that conversation about suicide. So I think it's a combination of both, right? Because we're talking a lot more about mental health than we ever had. Now, are we where we should be? Not yet, but we've come a long way. We have a long way to go. So I think when you hear about, but they never actually say it. If you read that post, it wasn't said how he died.
I figured.
Yeah, but they leave it to us to figure that one out. But when you look at who's posting it, and you probably saw the same one I did, your conclusion is going to be he probably died by suicide, right? But we still don't say it. And if you notice that on any post you see of officers that have taken their lives, nobody actually says that the officer took his life. Why don't we do that?
But I don't think they do that in general, do they? Like, when someone dies, they don't say it. Oh, they just said, "Oh, suddenly passed away," or
yeah. It's still, the stigma's still there, right? There's still that bit of stigma around it, I think, and or if the family's okay with you saying that, then post it. Maybe they're not okay with it. So there could be a lot of reasons why they don't say it, but the stigma is still there. Because if you break your leg, you can see it. Okay, you broke your leg. I get it. I understand it. I see why you're with crutches or you're off. But anything to do with the brain, the head, like even when we talk about TBIs, right? Like people that have traumatic brain injuries, again, you can't see it. You're like, I don't get it. What's your problem? Like, why can't, like, because we'll never understand the non-visible injuries, right?
So true.
It's very hard to comprehend what that person's going through.
On the service, do you guys talk about these things? Is there classes? Is there, hey, take a minute for a second, where you just saw was a little not normal for the everyday human? Yeah. Yeah,
no, we actually, because I headed it up, we did, it was called Road to Mental Readiness. So we did that course for all members, sworn, civilian, the whole 9 yards. And we did, it's a full day course. Everybody took the course and it was all on mental health. It was a great course. So I was one of the instructors and I was also the facilitator for that course. But I would always follow it up with, because you know what, not everybody's comfortable. Like they're going to sit and listen and they're going to take in what you're saying, but not everyone's comfortable sharing, right? Totally understand that. So some would hang out after and talk to us one-on-one, but I would send an email out with all of the resources, not just internal, because there's so many amazing, as you know, external resources out there that people can go to. And that's where social media is a good thing, because there's so many, like, All Okay, Badge of Life, Boots on the Ground, Wounded Warriors. I could go on and on and on. That are there for first responders and military. So we have that course. We have peer support. We have a critical incident response team that will go for you name it. So when Andrew Hong was murdered, I did 2 debriefs on that. Like we have officers that do that. We have civilians that do that. So we have a lot of great resources in place, and a lot of services have what I'm talking about. Most services have done the R2MR course and have the peer support and cert. So, if you'd said that 10 years ago, people would be like, what are you talking about? Right?
It's only 10 years ago.
That didn't exist. Like I had a friend of mine that was murdered on the job, 28. I got to do my math here. 28. I'm no good at math. So I'm not a fireman because I'm no good at math. 28 years ago. So think about it back then. What did we have for those officers? Nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some from that he was shot. From that incident, there's officers recently going off on like PTSD from that incident 28 years ago. How crazy is that?
It's insane.
Right. And they've probably lived with that for that many years. Right. Lived with dealing with it, not knowing how to deal with it. So, it's great that we have all this stuff now and things for officers and first responders and military to go to. It's not a perfect system, but it's better than what we didn't have before, right? We had nothing.
As officers, oftentimes it's like, oh, you have to be tough and have this superwoman, superman exterior and not show emotions. When things like what happened with Officer Hong and what's been going on, what happens to the morale of the team that you've seen from your perspective?
I think we more so band together, like doing that run for, Devin Northrup and Morgan Russell. As runners, that's what I know what to do. But you bring together people so they can grieve together, right? It sounds weird because we're running, but it was more than just a run, right?
But there's emotions coming out of you. Or emotions create emotions.
So, I think it brings people together. It's kind of, and I think it all depends. Like some people just keep it in. That's who they are. They don't say anything. The way we show, I think, our respect and our way of dealing with it is going to those funerals that we do. And I know some people say, why do you guys have these massive funerals, these police funerals for these officers? And I think that's our way of grieving, because we can say, here, we respect you and we're here to say thank you for what you did, right?
Because it could be any one of us.
Yeah. And that's what we say, we get very complacent. I think that's in any job. You become, when you do it long enough, you become very complacent, and we all do. I do. And you think that could have been any one of us, because you're so used to, I'm not on the road with the role I'm in now, but I do go out and I do stuff where I am on the road. And you just think that could have been me. That could have been you. That could have been any of us, because it was so random. And I think it makes you think, people think that as officers, we're paranoid, right? Like we sit in restaurants with our backs to the walls because we don't like people behind us. If someone's walking too closely behind me, if I'm outside, I will stop and let them pass me. I don't like people close behind me.
Is it because you also are carrying?
This is like in life in general. I could be anywhere.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yep. I don't like people behind me. If they're that close, I'll stop and let them pass. Right? Because it's just that, I don't know, I guess because of the job we do, right?
Mm-hmm. How long have you been on the service?
24 years.
Wow. And obviously,
I got when I was 12. No, that's not true.
And always Toronto police?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't live in Toronto. I've never lived in Toronto, but it's always been Toronto.
Now, obviously, you're big on the whole social media element of it all. How did that happen, that transition to social media and being open and talking about things that matter?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, actually. And I think about this, 12 years ago, I started social media, 12, 13. I'm like, that's half my career. I've been doing social media. I thought about that the other day. I'm like, ooh, that's a long time. So I got told, voluntold. That's a lot with policing. You get voluntold to do things. And I was voluntold because I was a crime analyst at the time to go on this social media course. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. I've got my own Facebook, whatever, right? So I go on the course, and at the time, my handle was Analyze This 5253. I thought, remember the movie Analyze This?
Yes.
So I thought it was a good handle. And I took the course, and I was like, okay. And then, I started posting. But then you're like, I don't know what to say. What do I say, right? Like, because this is going out to the public, and when you have accounts that are police related, you're an ambassador for the service, right? So yes, it's my name, but I'm representing Toronto Police, right? So you obviously have to be very careful with your wording and how you say things. So, at first I was like, okay, but then I was like, I kind of like this. Like, this is kind of cool. And I kind of embraced it. So then Scott Mills, who used to work with us and ran our social media, says, well, you're not always going to be the crime analyst. So you got to find a handle that, works for you. And like, as I saw you pick up your coffee, I'm addicted to coffee. It is a thing. If I don't have my morning coffee, it's not, you don't even want to be around me. Like that's the first thing I have to have in the morning. And then a few more after that.
Yes.
So he goes, what about the coffee cop? Well, the coffee cop was taken. So I grabbed the coffee cop, and I clearly a slow news day. Let me tell you, when I changed my handle and posted it, because like my phone was going off. It was pretty funny. I was like, all right. It stuck. So I've had people luckily with this job in the social media. So yes, I left the crime analyst job. I've done a few jobs after that. And I started presenting because when Scott Mills did social media, that was his job. When he went on holidays, because he does get holidays, it took 3 of us to do his one job because we also had other jobs, right? So the schools, because now, as you know, social media is starting to be a thing. This is, back 11 years ago, and kids are getting on it, and the schools were having issues, right? So they said, hey, we need somebody to present. So the 2 guys I was with doing Scott's job pointed to me, of course. So I was like, okay, created this presentation, which I'm telling you right now, if I went back to it, it's horrible. But at the time, I thought it was good. And I started speaking in the schools off the side of my desk, right? That wasn't my full job. And it just mushroomed from there. I've been traveling all over the world. I've been very lucky to do that, to speak to schools, parents, teachers, students. I think I said students, other law enforcement agencies. So depending on like my audience and what I would gear it towards, right? So yeah, it was just one of those, it organically kind of happened where I was told to do this course. At first I resisted it for a short time, and then it just continued from there. And then I thought, you know what? You get a little more open with how you talk to people online, right? You're just kind of like, if I'm just going to be this officer and all I talk about is policing, people are going to get, one, really bored with me because I have to show the human side, right? I'm a human that just wears a uniform. So humanizing the badge is huge. And I just brought out a bit of, not a lot, but a bit of my, personal stuff, life, and intertwined it with my work social media. And it kind of went from there. And the mental health thing was, my daughter struggles with mental health, and I was very open about that. And some people may disagree with that, but she knew I did it. I asked her, made sure she was okay with it, because I am an ambassador for the mental health, Children's Mental Health of Ontario. And we used to do Twitter chats. So I would talk about it in those sense, depending on the questions. So people could relate to me because I had the same struggles they did, right? With their children or otherwise. So yeah, the longer I've been on it, the more, I guess, open I am, but the more I'm like, oh no, you didn't just say that. Like before I would ignore it, but now I will give a professional answer, but it's going to be to the point. And if I disagree with something they're saying, I will make sure that I put that in there, because, when you talk about Twitter, there's a lot of trolls on that platform.
I have to stay away from it. It's just too toxic.
Yeah. It's very toxic. Instagram's not like that. You get the odd comment on a public account. Facebook can go either way, but and I don't know if Elon Musk is going to change that. I have no idea. But there's so many trolls on there. It's crazy, right? So you just never know what's a bot.
Just even a human being can be so nasty to another human being on Twitter, and sometimes those things can get picked up, and their followings will all just gang up on somebody, and you have no idea, why is my phone dinging off the...
Yeah. And that's the one thing I don't like about it. So, I say it like Twitter's the here and now though. Like if you want instant news, that's where you go. Although Instagram's kind of turning that way. As we know, Instagram's owned by Facebook. Like Instagram, you have the access to put as much as you want on there when it comes to words, and you can add up to 10 photos. Twitter, you can only do 4. You have 280 characters. There's a lot of limitations with Twitter. So you have to get very creative on there to try and get your point across. In a short, yes, you can reply to yourself and do a thread, but you're going to lose people, right? We have the attention span of a goldfish, which by the way is 8 seconds.
Exactly. Oh, it's not? Okay.
8 seconds. And then you lose people, right? So yeah, your question was, with the social media, how do I use it? So again, I'm very careful. I have personal and professional accounts, and my personal are not,
public.
Not at all. They're not even in my real name. So, because I have to be careful. You do have a lot of strange people on social media, as you know.
Very much so.
And I'm very public, right? So, I'm out there. And there's times where I don't post because I'm like, if I have nothing really to say, I'm not going to go and just for the sake of posting.
That's another thing. Is like, how much do you just keep posting just to say I'm here, right? Without value? Yeah.
People, well, that's exactly it. It is without value. People will get bored of looking at your stuff and either unfollow you because you're now putting out stuff that they have no interest in looking at. Like I had stopped, not that I had stopped posting, I just didn't have a lot to say and I was busy, and somebody said, I haven't seen you on here in a while. Hope everything's okay. So it's nice that they check in, right? Because I haven't posted, but I do a lot more, as you probably see, a lot more on, well, you wouldn't because you're not on Twitter, but on Instagram. I post a lot more on there. I still post on Twitter, but more so on Instagram. Like when I went to Devin and Morgan's funeral, like I'm there paying my respects to them, but I also wanted to capture it for the public that weren't there, right? To see the images. And you saw the pictures that I posted, and I'm very careful with what pictures I take and how I word things when it comes to that. But I wanted to capture those moments to show people, again, it humanizes us, right? Like we have 2 people here that we're mourning and saying goodbye to.
Do you get a lot of hate, or have you ever had that lashback?
Yeah, you do get some nasty messages, and I'll tell you one that turned around. I had one, and he had commented on my post, and he was very arrogant and very rude. And I didn't reply right away because I didn't see it. I do have a life outside of social media. Some people forget that. So, and I finally checked my phone. Like it was within 15, 20 minutes or something. And he goes, oh, what are you going to block me? Like you blocked me. I'm like, I haven't even looked at your post. No longer blocked you. And I replied to him. And his first words were, first, I want to thank you for answering my condescending questions. And then I went off and I said what I had to say, like professionally. And then he sent me a direct message and, apologized and everything else. And I'm like, see, if you ignore people, they're going to create their own narrative, right? That's the problem. So if someone's posting something that's not true and you just ignore it, they're going to make that narrative true and the public's going to believe them. You have to sometimes correct people because they're wrong. But you can do it in a way where you're professional and courteous, right?
Mm-hmm. Again, it's your own life. How much do you feed into that negativity of someone else, right? Because they're not looking at themselves in the mirror and dealing with whatever's going on in their head. But oftentimes, so little goes so far. So maybe they needed attention, is what it is.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it is, right? Is these people hide behind, and they usually there's a backstory to them, right? Whether they're being bullied or something's going on in their life, and they want that attention, so they just go after people because it's a lot easier to hide behind a computer or a phone than it is to say something face to face, right? I'll put my fake profile here and I can say whatever I want, right? Mm-hmm. And that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and because that guy that made comments to me, do you think he had his profile picture there? No.
They never do. They never do.
No, they never do. So the fact that he actually apologized, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. But again, I'm like, I'm going to stand my ground here because you're wrong. And I'm going to let you know you're wrong. But I can say it in a way where it's still dignified and I'm not being rude. I'm just, straight and to the point.
Like a social media person for not just the Toronto police account, but is there an officer that also is like a community outreach officer on social media like yourself?
Yes. So what we were looking at when we started, so I used to teach the social media course. I did that for, I want to say about 7 or 8 years. Right. So any officer that wants to be an ambassador for the service on social media has to take the 3-day course that we were running. And it covers like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the whole gamut. So, we would target like our neighborhood officers should have social media. When we had the school resource officers, because where are kids going to talk to you? I had a lot of kids reach out to me through social media. They're not going to email you. They're kids, right? Yeah. They'll be like, what? So social media is how you're going to get to these kids, because as we know, as soon as something happens, even in the schools now, the first thing they turn to is social media.
Social media.
Right? And post. So school resource are like our crime prevention officers, our community response officers. So I'd like to say like we are a very progressive service when it comes to social media, and we have a lot of officers that are on social media.
That's super cool. Yeah, I had Sean on.
Sean. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. He does a lot of live videos.
He does, like every morning. But so tell me this. If someone's getting bullied online and, oftentimes when you reach out to somebody that's a negative person, is putting up false stuff or just attacking you, you can sometimes feed into it and they want that drama, clearly. Mm-hmm. And they'll keep going and they won't stop. What do you do? And
it's hard, and not for an officer, because obviously our situations would be different there. But
totally, but you can go to the officers, you can call the police, put a report in, but they can't do anything because something about if there's no physical harm, it's really hard to deal with social media and libel and all these things and freedom of speech. And so what? Does everybody just get run over?
Well, that to a point though, right? So if it's targeted towards one person and it's repeated, that's criminal harassment. So is it a lot more, I don't know if I want to say more work or more difficult, because you then have to, depending on what platform it's on, right? So most of these platforms, their server, their office may be in the US, but their server could be like in the Netherlands or in Ireland, right? So now you have to do, it's called an MLAT, so mutual something, a treaty. I can't remember the actual term for it. But basically it's saying, hey, we would like to get this information from your country off this server, if you could send it back to us. So you would do that It takes a long time to do because you're going to have to get, like, you could seize a phone and you can see what apps they're on. But unless you have access to that account, you can't see what's being said, right? Or if they delete it. So delete doesn't exist. Let me just say that. But if they delete it off there, it's going to still be sitting on that server, right?
Totally. Yeah. No, but like, so if someone says something bad about, say, me, for example, I screenshot it.
Yeah.
And where do I take that? I mean, how many of those do you get where until you say enough is enough, right? You hear people taking their own lives. You hear people.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you do in those situations? There's nothing?
Yeah, well, no. So that's where you want to put a report in, because there's probably a very good chance that you're not the first person that person has done this to. So at the very least, put a report in. And if it's, and if it's ongoing, because we've had these scenarios happen, whether it's fine, because sometimes they know the person, so that makes it easy, right? Because the peer-to-peer bullying that happens in like high schools and stuff and grade school is vicious. Those kids are vicious. And what they say to each other, it's mind-boggling. Because back in the day, and I'm aging myself here, the rotary phones on the wall, where you pick it up and tell your brother or sister to get off the phone because you need it. Right? If you got mad at your friend, you would either just not talk to them, give it a day or two, pick up the phone, and you'd be friends again or whatever, right?
Oh,
but now, kids get into a fight, they turn to social media, and they start bashing that person on TikTok, on Instagram, on Snap, right? You can't take that back.
No.
It's now out there. It gets screen grabbed, and then somebody posted on theirs. Oh, look what so-and-so said, right? And you can see how this, and there's accounts out there, like for high schools, that if you send in a direct message to that account, they will then, so say you screen grabbed a nasty comment from an ex-friend, they send it into this account, and this account will post it.
To like thousands of.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that goes on now. And so, and I've had that conversation with my girls, like if you're having a fight with somebody, do not turn to social media and post it, because you cannot take it back, and people are going to screen grab it and keep it, and and you're going to regret it, right? Mm-hmm. So
you could put a report in, and if you knew that person, so you put a report in, that person. I mean, how many times over do you get run over until you?
Yeah, so I don't know what there's not an exact number to it, but it's repeated, right? Repeated contact where you have said, stop messaging me. Now, like you said, if you block them, they'll find you either on another platform. I always tell people blocking is the best option. Most kids have multiple accounts, so there's your first problem. And then reporting it, right? And you just, as long as the officer knows what to do when it comes to social media, and some are still like, I'm not too sure what to do with this. It's social media, right? How am I supposed to handle this? I really don't know. There may be no charges laid, but if the report's put in and then it continues, you can add to that report, and maybe at that point, right? At least you have it on record. So if somebody else complains, because if nobody ever puts a police report in and this person's doing this to multiple people, they're going to go, well, he's never done this before. Well, meanwhile, he or she has, but it's not documented, right?
Yeah.
So at the very least, if you'd say, I'd like this on a report on file in case this person comes and maybe physically damages my house or, approaches my child, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And you can screen grab it, but the key thing is that if charges were laid, they would need like the organic conversation, and they would need like the URLs and that's where like our cyber
MLAT. Okay.
And that depends. So like, and here's an example, Kik, the app Kik. If something happened on there, that's actually based out of Waterloo. It's a Canadian app. So we just need to get, a production order and get that information, which is quicker because it's within Canada.
Right. I didn't even know there's another app.
If it what?
I didn't even know there's another app out there now, Kik.
Oh, that's been around for a long time. And it's basically, so what Kik is it's, you don't need a phone number. So a lot of younger kids will use it because they don't need a phone number. All they need is Wi-Fi. And then they can create an account and you can talk to people, text them, you can video, you name it.
So it's like a WhatsApp.
Kinda, but WhatsApp, you need a number still, right? It's still associated to your phone number. Kik is not.
Oh, and it says it's for teens.
Yeah. Oh, you looking it up?
Yeah. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Oh, there's many out there. There is many. Look up Yubo. There's another one for you. It's Tinder for kids.
That's creepy.
Yep. And it's exactly the same as Tinder. You swipe left or right, start chatting. Yeah.
For,
But
for
it's for
children?
13 to 18. Yeah. There's a lot of apps out there, and we could talk forever and a day about, and there's tons I don't know about. Because there's some in the US that we don't have here. There's some here that they don't have in the US, and there's some in like the UK or, other countries that don't have, right? So, yeah, I mean, bullying is a huge thing. And then throw in a pandemic. Well, that just quadrupled the bullying because kids are online, right? And the big one that's now gone is House Party. That was a huge group chat.
I remember that House Party. It was a
Solo Red Cup. Need I say more? That's what their thing was.
Yeah.
So these kids would get on these video group chats, right? But then people would try and get into the chat, and then the bullying would go on. Like, we didn't invite you, get out of here. And you can't kick them out once they're in, right? You have to actually end the conversation and start a new one.
All right.
So there's nasty stuff that would go on in there too. So yeah, the pandemic did not help by any means. These kids got very proficient at social media.
Have you seen a decline in terms of the bullying?
No, I'd say anything. It's gotten worse.
Gotten worse, yeah.
Yeah, because they have all the access, because they were raised with, or what taught them for the last 2 years was a computer and a laptop and a phone, right? Kids are smarter than us, right? They're very proficient with those things.
So true.
Yeah. So the bullying during COVID went up 80%. Right. And it's not just kids. Don't forget, this happens to adults too, as we very well know. I mean, we call them trolls, but it's still the same concept, right? Where people attack you online.
It's messed up. It's a weird time.
You see it with politicians. You see it with, famous people. Like it happens to them all the time, right? And where you see that these like singers, like Shawn Mendes, Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, they all took mental health breaks, right?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you can't stay in that spotlight and just keep getting dragged through it all, because you read those comments, especially on Twitter. If a politician puts something up, and sometimes I'll never comment, but I'll always look and observe how people interact with one another. But God, is it ever nasty?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so easy, right? So easy.
Imagine someone spewing that out of them. Like, really? You had to like say those things? Like, yikes.
And they have no idea, and they're probably not even accurate, right? So as that person that's reading it, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. All those actors and actors, no. I want their money. I don't want their job. Because it's not worth it.
It's so true.
Being in the spotlight like that all the time.
No.
I get the odd person that, like, I've walked into places, and it's one thing when I'm at work, but when I'm in my, I'm not working, I'm in my hometown and stuff, and I'd have somebody come up and go, "Coffee cop?" And I'm like, yeah. Like stuff like that, it's creepy, right?
It's creepy.
Yeah, and usually 9 times out of 10, it's, a really nice person that's just like, "Hey, follow you," and which is great. But yeah, sometimes you're just like, that was weird. It is. So there's a lot of positives to it, and I've met some amazing people, right? Like yourself. Like this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for social media.
No.
But yeah, there's a dark side to it, like everything in life, right? There's also a dark side to it, and social media isn't the evil; it's how people use it.
It's how people use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's almost like-minded individuals or someone that's trying to spread positivity. I think we all kind of need to stick together and really amplify these messages, and you do that so well. I mean, with All Okay. That is amazing. Yeah. And I love the brand. I love the brand itself. So.
Yeah, so do I. And they, I was involved with them long before I became an ambassador. And because I did the Walk for the Wounded. You know, that thing where I'm like, I walked 42 kilometers with a 20-pound weighted vest, and I swore I'd never do that again. And then, you finish it and you're like, okay, I could do that again. And I'm doing it next year. Oh. The only reason I didn't do it this year was because I had a wedding to go to, a family wedding. So I will be with the All Okay crew, and I'll be doing it next year. And then I'll probably regret it again. Good chance. It's the hardest thing you've ever done, but that's what you want it to be, right? We're doing this for military and first responders that have lost their life or are struggling with mental health. It's not meant to be comfortable, right? That's why we do it. And that's why we wear that weighted vest, and we do the 22 push-ups every hour, because that's it's an American stat, but 22 veterans that take their lives every day. So yeah, so it's, that's why we do it, right? If it was comfortable, what's the purpose of doing it? So you struggle, and it's a mental game, right? After a certain amount of hours, like we walked for 8.5 hours with that vest on.
And sooner or later, there's comfort in discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, kudos to Dylan and the crew for putting that together. That was, just a bunch of military guys that got together and said, we've got to do something. We've lost too many friends. And here we are. So it'll be number 4.0. 4.0. Walk for the Wounded, 4.0.
We see the vet platforms. So you're seeing vet podcasts and All Okay and swag and all this stuff. But is there something like a podcast for ex-RCMP, ex-police in Canada? Like a podcast platform?
Not that I know of. Not to say there isn't, but not that I know of. No.
But there are groups out there, peer groups and all that.
Yeah.
Before we get going here, Laurie, is like kind of like how we brought up earlier about the mental health and the infrastructure is lacking. Now, for me, I always say is, okay, we have 211 here. If I'm struggling with something, I don't want to be put on hold. I don't want to be number 5002 in line and then they call someone to my house and freak me out some more. Like, where does someone start? What could be a better way of dealing with things that you think we need? Like, when your kids are older and you look back at life, what would you want as an infrastructure for surrounding mental health?
For mental health? Access to resources, like immediate, right? Because some people can't wait a week, a month, 6 months for help because they may be gone, right? They may take their life at that point because they're struggling and they're so, and sometimes going to an emergency room isn't the right answer for them either, right? So it's just, and you know what, it's the lack of psychiatrists that we have. I think that's Canada-wide. But I would want to see more immediate resources for people to go to, whatever that looks like, whether it's drop-in centers, whether it's, something that's within a hospital that they could go to. And at least be triaged, not like an emergency room, but specifically, and I'm not talking about CAMH and stuff, that's in Toronto, but a separate entity, right, that they could go to and...
Is that Canadian Mental Health Association?
Yeah. So it's strictly for mental health, that hospital, but they're backed up like everything else, right? Yeah. So waiting in a waiting room for hours on end doesn't always work for people. And it's getting the right help and depending on what they need, right? There's a lot of, online now where you can talk to people online, but sometimes that might work for you, but that might not work for me. And maybe I want to talk to somebody in person, but I can't wait 5 weeks. I need to talk to somebody now. I'm struggling now. It's like telling somebody with a broken arm, bone protruding, we'll get you an orthopedic surgeon. It's going to be about 5 weeks though. You just hang on with that bone sticking out. Would we ever do that?
No, never.
So somebody that is severely struggling with their mental health and need help now, how do they access that? And sometimes they can't. So I think it's, I would like to see just more access to resources, immediate resources for people in general.
Why do you do what you do? Because you do more than just policing. You care about your community. You care about people. You care about mental health, of course, stemming from what you deal with internally with your family. But there's got to be a why to this. This purpose is greater than you.
No one's ever asked me that before. Well, I love what I do. I think my mom always said, you should have been a social worker right from the get-go. So I've always been like this. It feels good to help other people. To know that I've made a difference in somebody's life. And it's a total cliche to say, I got into policing to people go, oh yeah, sure you did, to help people, right? But that's what we're doing. So I wear many hats and I say that to people, right? It's not just the policing. Like you said, the mental health because of my daughter, that's how that all started. Because it's not just her mental health. It affects, me. It affects, her sister. It affects, her dad. Like it affects everybody in the household when you're dealing with somebody who's struggling with their mental health. So I think I do it because I'm making a difference in somebody's life for the better. Yeah. Whether that's presenting on social media and helping somebody stay safe, whether it's helping somebody, and I've done that for officers, and all I'm doing is giving them the resource and the guidance to get where they need to get help. And, I had an officer say, like, you saved my life. I said, well, no, you saved your life. I just kind of helped you get there. Simple things, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that they just can't do for themselves at the time. So I do it because I think I don't know, it's makes me feel better to know I'm helping people.
If there's one of your brothers or sisters out there that are struggling, what is the message you could pass on to them right now?
To talk to somebody. That is the key. You're not alone. Like, there is so many people out there struggling in silence. Don't struggle in silence, because there is so many resources and options and people out there, including myself, that are here for you to help you, to get you the help you need. And sometimes people are in a place where they can't do it themselves. So we're here to help you get to where you need to go.